The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed in this podcast
blah,
are...
blah, blah. It's entertainment, people. Enjoy the show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unboxing Photography. I am Ricky, and on the other end is Jim. So welcome. Thank you for joining me once again. I appreciate it. I know we've been off for a few weeks. I had some events, and I went to visit my daughter. So I haven't seen her in a year. That was much needed. And I have a big backlog of photography that I haven't even looked at. So there's that. How you been, Jim?
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's been a while since we talked, and I've been shooting kind of like mad. And, you know, summer's coming to an end here, or came to an end. And so we're getting into the fall, and that's always... that I always have really mixed feelings about it because I love the fall, but then it also means that pretty soon it's going to be harder to make work because people aren't going to be out as much because the winters here in New York can be rough. They can also be pretty mild. So I don't know what we'll get this year, but at the end of the summer, like very beginning of September, there's just like a ton of work to be done, like photographic work. So I'm just coming off of like a massive amount of shooting, and to the degree where like last week I told my wife, I'm like, my eyes are messed up. Like, I've been looking through a viewfinder so much and took so many, like hundreds and hundreds of images, and then developed and scanned everything, and then worked on everything that like literally my eyes were just like, dude, just stop looking through the viewfinder, please. Give me a break. So I want to put like on a pair of those, like, Schwarzenegger Terminator glasses and just go like sit in a chair for a couple of weeks. But I don't think my photographic motive, my internal voice is going to let me do that. So I'm going to go out shooting right after this call. So hopefully my eyes will put up with me. We'll see.
Nice. Well, good luck with that. I've been trying to refresh my film stock. And what I mean by that is I usually buy it in bulk, not like bulk rolls, but just like a lot of singular rolls to have. And there's coming to its shelf life end, and I want to re-up it so that I have fresh film ready. I just cleared out 120. I don't think I'll be stocking up any of that. I will most likely just buy as I need for medium format. And then 35, I'll keep at least just a stash of 5 rolls because I'm not really shooting a lot of film now. I'm trying to balance it with digital. I want to get to a point where I don't shoot like over 100 photos at any given time, right? So I'm trying to perfect my image selection before I push the shutter, which actually is a good segue into today's topic, which is the frame. And yeah,
the frame. Something that you rarely hear people talk about, in all the photography podcasts I watch, because I watch a lot of them that are non-unboxing type videos on YouTube and stuff like that. You don't really, sometimes you'll hear people talk about composition, certainly, but I think the most important thing to me, more than anything, because we could talk about, exposure, and we could talk about storytelling and, visual signature, all these other kind of things. But what it kind of starts with is, the frame and the boundaries of that, and what you're going to include and what you're not going to include. And the first decision that we have to make before we make any decisions about anything else that's going to happen really is where that box is going to go, and whatever decision we make at that point is either going to strengthen or weaken every decision that comes after that. Mm-hmm. So you could have something really great happening in the frame. You could see some totally interesting situation happening on the street, and let's say, off to the side, someone's picking their nose or something, and you have this amazing, beautiful moment in the middle of the frame, but then there's this distracting thing or this sign or something on the side of the frame, and it's going to completely weigh down or detract from whatever whatever you wanted the photograph to be about, And so I think the more we shoot, because I'm definitely an advocate of shooting more, not shooting. I don't mean like taking pictures without purpose. I just mean like the more you shoot, just the better you get at shooting. We've talked about this before, but
yeah,
I think you start pre-visualizing. You'll get to a point where if you see something that you want to take a photograph of, before I ever pick up the camera, I have a frame in my head or in my eye, and I know when I'm going to pick it up. I can already see, I'm looking at the scene and I'm going like, okay, I'm seeing the distracting elements, or I'm seeing things that are going to strengthen what I want to have in the frame. And then I orientate myself and orientate the camera to make sure that I'm highlighting, that I'm strengthening whatever is going to be in the frame. And you fine tune, obviously, when you bring it up to your eye, because in a dynamic environment, it's funny. Like I rode motorcycles for a really long time, and almost in a professional way, because I was a tour guide and rode cross country for 4 times, rode across America on motorcycles. And you did have to have something in motorcycle riding, which is situational awareness, right? Which is understanding where you are in space, where everything else is in space, and how those things might be a threat, and positioning yourself in that space to escape a threat, or give yourself a buffer relative to where a potential threat might be, so that because you're risking your life every time you ride a motorcycle. And I think fighter pilots have the same thing. Like anybody who's in an environment that's like, let's say, a dangerous or challenging environment, has to have situational awareness. This awareness of space, everything happening all around you. And what's great about that is when you have that situational awareness, I think it helped me as a photographer, being aware of all these things that are kind of happening and where you are relative to all those things would sometimes enable me on a motorcycle to make a move and be in a safe place. When I'd be like, that idiot in that car is going to pull right in front of me. So before I have to deal with that, I'm just going to get out. I'm going to go over there because I don't want to get hit by this guy. And invariably, after putting the miles on the bike that I did, which, probably over 100,000 miles motorcycle riding, it would always happen. I can anticipate it.
Yeah. It's a good metaphor, by the way.
And I think honestly, I've said to other people that I shoot with, I'm like, I feel like, especially if you're in an environment where a lot's happening, that I feel those same senses like turning on, and so I think as it relates to the frame, if, once you've shot like a whole lot, you start to develop this awareness of this situational awareness of what's going on around me. What am I trying to accomplish? What is this picture about? And where am I going to position myself, the camera? Am I going to point up, down, left, right, move backwards, move forwards, whatever? I think that having that can strengthen that. But anyway, I'll stop talking because that was a big, long jag. But I think the frame is like the foundation of any good photograph. And you could have the most interesting thing in the world happening in your photograph, and if you didn't frame it properly, it's not going to be as strong an image as if you took the time to do that.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I definitely agree with you. I think what you were trying to say is kind of how I prepare myself mentally for whenever I'm out and I have an idea, and the idea basically, it positions me, right? I become grounded and, like you said, fine tune, right? So I got an idea of a concept I'm trying to capture, and then you look through the view frame or my viewfinder, and basically I'm taking in all that information and I'm aligning it to essentially create my idea that I have in my head. So I think it's similar to what you were saying.
when I'm gonna mention Ralph Gibson again because I always do. When I took my mentorship with Ralph Gibson, he I sent him like 12 pictures or something like that, and he looked at all of them and he said a whole bunch of nice things about the pictures, and then I was like, wow, you know, he said he really thinks he said a lot of really great things about my pictures, very insightful things. And I'm like, this is going great. And then all of a sudden he just said, okay, so now I have one question for you. And I'm like, yeah, okay, Ralph, what? And he goes, when the fuck are you going to take responsibility for your frame? You know? And, and I was like, what? You know?
He listened by head.
And yeah, exactly. I was like, so he just like basically showed me all this space that was in the frame that was doing exactly what I'm talking about, was detracting from what I was doing. And then I know we've talked about this before, but he started editing and cropping all my images to show me kind of how this image could be stronger. And once I saw it, it became very obvious. And this is a guy who's obviously shot hundreds of thousands of frames, so he knows. And he also talks to painters and things like that. And we got a lot into talking about how painters like decide where things are going to be, how bright or dark they're going to be, all this stuff, because they can make all those decisions. We don't have the same ability to make those decisions as somebody like a painter does, because they can decide everything they're going to put in their frame, what color, what size, what shape, what lightness, what darkness. We can make some of those decisions by things like what exposure we're using, or, you know, or what aperture, you know, yada, yada, where we position ourselves, what time of day we go out. But we're still dealing with something that's like, we're presented with what we're presented with, and we have very little ability to influence that in the moment. Right. But what he said was, you know, at the very least, what you do is he suggested that I start cropping my pictures in post, because after I crop my pictures in post, if I make them strong in post and see what the mistakes that I made, then I can then go out when I shoot. After a while, I'll start positioning the frame that way, because I'll already know like what I want the image to be like, because I've seen, wow, why did I put this much space in the picture?
Yeah.
Or why is this person over here instead of in the center, or whatever, you know? And the funny thing was, we spent so much time talking about the frame, and so much time with him editing my pictures and showing me where I was weak in my frames. And then I saw JML, Joseph Maria Lopez,
Joseph Michael Lopez.
Joseph Michael Lopez. I always fucked that up. Sorry, Joseph, if you're listening, which he probably isn't. But anyway, I saw him. I think I might have been with John. I can't remember who I was with. Maybe I was with somebody else, some other photographer. But I was in Union Square, and I saw him, and we started talking, and he was talking about mentoring and everything, and I mentioned that I I think it might have been. I saw him with somebody else, but he had been mentoring John, and so I said, "Oh, you're friends with my friend John Hendrick," and so we started talking, and I told him I had done one with Gibson, and then we started talking about the frame, and it was like a light went on over his head. He was like, "Absolutely, nobody talks about that. It's the most fucking important thing. You have to take responsibility for your frame, and it's something nobody ever talks about, and they don't give it the importance it needs to have, and they talk about all this other bullshit." He's like every single photographer who's great, and every picture that's great, if you look at their frames, they've taken responsibility for everything happening in the frame. There's not a single great picture where you can look at the frame and say, what's this bullshit over here?
Yeah.
And our own pictures, we can do whatever we want. We could try to AI the shit out, or we can try to like crop it or whatever. But, you know, after a while, if you do that, if you really think about the frame and you think about what's going on, you'll be like, oh, you know, I should have moved to the left. I should have moved to the right. I should have, you know, opened the lens up so I can blow out the background, or, you know, or whatever. You know, you start to look that way. And when you do, I think the pictures just get way stronger when you become aware of that.
Yeah. I like talking to Joseph because he is one of the most passionate people when it comes to photography. And when he really gets going, he gets going. And it's like a masterclass in every conversation. when talking about photography, of course. And when we did our mentorship sessions, he had all of these resources because he's a teacher. He teaches photography, or he did at least when he lived in New York. And like he was educating me for real on like all these photographers and all of these really well done images that like couldn't even think of. Like, how did someone come up with this concept? And it's kind of like Rodney Smith, right? That guy's creativity is just on a level of its own. But yeah, so like getting into all of that, like you said, like you just kind of soak it in and it stays with you because you want to strive to achieve that level. I'm going to say the word competency, like not to say that people aren't competent when it comes to photography, but you want that level of competency and confidence that it's just automatic. So kind of like the cropping in post, kind of just, it's reinforcing that.
Yeah. Well, and I've been lucky in life to like have a fair amount of interest on things that required me to seek at some point education from people who knew better. Mm-hmm. Right. And when we start with anything that we're interested in or any kind of craft or anything we're trying to learn, and we struggle, we look and we go to this and that, and we listen to peers, we listen to all sorts of different people, and we get these prejudices or these notions in our head, and we are constantly evolving. I mean, if you're somebody who's really seeking and trying to do better, what you'll find out is things that you thought were truths end up being like sometimes, okay, maybe this isn't the entire truth, or maybe I'm going to modify what that truth is, or maybe there's another level to this, or maybe it's not an important truth, you know? And I remember like I rode on the street, getting back to motorcycles for a minute, I rode on the street for a bunch of years, and I had all sorts of, I would ride with people who were faster than me, and we would go out, and these guys, when you're trying to keep up with people that are faster with you, you either learn to ride faster or you crash. And sometimes you do both, but, but I started getting like better and better motorcycles. And I was riding like Ducatis, which, you know, an Italian motorcycle, which I really loved. And I just wanted to get better. So I took this class with, the California Superbike School. And I went to this school, and it was like a 2-day school. We went to a track. You had to wear leathers and all this protective gear. And there were instructors there. There was this guy named Keith Code. And we would sit in classroom lectures, and he would kind of talk to us about all these different things. And I remember I had all these preconceived notions and all these ideas about, and things that I had read, and conclusions that I had come to. And a lot of it was just wrong, you know, or exaggerated, or I wasn't focusing on the right thing. And I didn't know what I was doing that was wrong. Yeah. And I would have never known had I not gone to somebody who was like really smart and who followed me around the track and had pulled me over and said, this is what you're doing incorrectly. Now follow me and watch how to do it properly. And I did it, you know, and it was expensive to do it, but I didn't ride the same way after I took the class. I was just better at what I did. And I've met really high level musicians and, you know, got mentorships from pretty high level photographers and taken martial arts, and you've seen people who've dedicated their whole life to a craft. And a lot of times these people can be very brusque with us when they're teaching because there are fundamentals to them that are like really obvious. And when they meet with people who are just starting or who don't know, there's almost a sense of they're incredulous. You know, they're like, how the fuck do you not know this? You know? Yeah. And they're like, hey, dumbass. They want to like slap you upside the head because you don't know something. And it can be rough. Mm-hmm. You know, you and I have talked about the, you know, mentors being brutal. But, you know, I look at YouTube. I look at the stuff on YouTube. Like I look at a lot of these instructional photography videos, a lot of people who have huge followings and who show their pictures and stuff. And I'm looking at the photograph, and these people are dispensing information and knowledge for free on YouTube to masses of people. And then people in a lot of cases are just parroting. Like I'll meet people on the street, other photographers, and I'll hear them say shit that I've heard in YouTube videos, or they'll reference something somebody said in a YouTube video. And then I'll look at who made that video, and their work will be in the YouTube video.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll see all the problems that Ralph Gibson pointed out to me in the first 2 seconds, or that Joseph pointed out to you, or whatever. I'll see, I'm like, these people are talking and educating and sending out a message, but they're just as fucking uninformed as anybody else.
Yeah.
And in most cases, I mean, there's some people who aren't and who are better, you know, but I think it's really important to vis-a-vis, you know, mentors and educators, to look at somebody's work and really look at their work and see, okay, what have they done? What have they accomplished? What do their pictures look like? And then that'll help you make a decision about the validity or the gravity of whatever they're telling you. Because, you know, anybody can get on YouTube, myself included. You and I are doing it right now, right?
Yeah,
we can get, there's no barrier to, there's no barrier to entry. We're just talking shit. We're just giving our opinions, right? But when you talk to somebody who really knows what they're doing and has really, you know, dedicated their life to the craft, and they can impart something to you, I think they can really elevate your shit. And that's why to me, the first thing I always start with when I look at anybody's work, anybody, I look at their frame.
So to add to that, referencing like other photographers who have YouTube channels and outlets and media platforms like that, I like to think the reason is more along the lines of kind of like self-induced, I don't want to say errors, but those are probably the people who live by the mantra of, photography is subjective. So there is no wrong, right? There can't be no wrong. And I think when we look at it, it's more along the lines of, I have fun doing it. I enjoy doing it. It's a passion doing it. I have all of the right reasons to do it, but I'm looking to become better at what I do. Now, how do I get there? Right? So you have that crowd versus I'm going to stick with whatever's trending, and I'm going to continue to chase all of the wrong, I don't want to say goals, but they're chasing the wrong ideas. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, the whole question is whether something is good or bad or right or wrong is a rocky road in art, you know?
Yep.
And because I come from the music business, like you know, somebody who writes a really great song or really knows how to play their instrument or has a really great voice, like you can hear those things, you can see those things, and you can say, okay, that's the bar. But we live in a world where there's things like auto-tune, and so people who are like, you know, really terrible singers, like let's say somebody like Jennifer Lopez, right, as an example, or Paula Abdul, or and I think Enrique Iglesias was. I'm just mentioning artists that I know, like things have surfaced of them singing without auto-tune, or when their track went down, you know, or but there's technological things that can kind of correct the errors that they make when they're singing. You know, there's auto-tune. It can kind of, you know, when they're singing in real time, it can correct what they do, or they sing to track, you know, and put on a show. And millions of people buy their music, but they can't really sing. Or you look at something like punk rock, which when punk rock came out, like it was a period in the 70s where there were all these virtuoso musicians doing like this amazing playing. And then punk comes out and it's like, all you need to know is 3 chords and you can like yell at a microphone. And so that was like, okay, so is that good? Some people, I mean, it became like a whole thing. And you could say like, well, those guys didn't even know how to play. So to say that there's some kind of definitive good or bad is difficult. That said, if you're just having fun and you just enjoy going out and taking pictures, that's great. That's really cool. But I think when you if you start looking at other things, like if you go to museums, if you look at photo books, if you look at paintings, you look at other works of art, you start to see when craft enters into it, and when you have an idea of what you're doing, and when someone's mastered their tools, I think you start to see that the level of quality and the vision that's being conveyed has more clarity to it, and it's more obvious. And it's something that you can do more frequently. Anybody can take a picture once in a while. You could give a bunch of monkeys cameras and then let them run around a zoo for a week, or in a cage, give them all instant Kodak cameras and develop all the film. And 99.9% of the pictures will be shit. But then one of them, you'll be like, wow, this looks like fucking Henry Cartier-Bresson took this, just because it was accidentally great. So yeah, I mean, look, if you're not trying to be an artist or really great at it, then it doesn't really matter. But if you are, then there's a lot of stuff to look at that can show you how to elevate what you're doing.
Yeah. I am going to add to your list, and I'd like to say a generational talent who actually got really lucky. I'm going to go ahead and say T-Pain, because he is probably the most well-known artist for auto-tune, but he can actually sing really good without auto-tune. So much so that he actually sings better songs than what it sounds like with the auto-tune. But I think in his, I can't really speak for him, but this is just my opinion. I think for him, he found the code for success, right? And it worked for him. Again, I don't think he needs auto-tune. He's an amazing singer without it. I've heard him live, and I've seen YouTube videos, and he's a really good singer without it. So I'm just throwing that down there. There's also those one-off people who use the tools that are just, they don't necessarily need them to be better than they are, if that makes sense.
Well, no, I think what you're saying is like very valid, and it kind of you could jump from that lily pad to the AI lily pad, or any technical or any technical thing that somebody wants to kind of use. Like it's kind of like they say in music. Once you really learn the fundamentals, then you can throw them away. Then you learn the rules and then break them, right? So if you're a really, really good singer and you decide like, okay, I'm a really good singer, and you know what? There's lots of good singers. I mean, there's certainly lots of good singers in in Caribbean music. There's like a tremendous amount of people who have really, really great voices. But after a while, it's like, okay, well, there's a lot of people that have great voices. How do I differentiate myself? And then so you look for something that's a tool that helps you, leap out from everybody else. And that might be something in your photography that you decide, I'm going to use some kind of technique or element that makes my stuff look uniquely me. And it's going to be some kind of tool or plugin or whatever.
Yeah.
But usually, if you're not very good and you use that, then the pictures are going to be more about what the tool is. And if you are very good, then the pictures are going to be about you and what you do, but that technology will be an enhancement or an element in it. It won't be the whole thing.
Would you say,
would
you say that's more dependency? And what I'm going to use a reference. So like, a photographer, I never use names, but someone probably knows who I'm talking about. Pretty decent capturing certain images, but then they depend on their tools in post-processing to achieve a signature look. Whereas opposed to if you're aware and you know how to use the tools you have in front of you to achieve a signature look without those tools.
Well, I think you're talking about Alan Schaller and the fact that he goes like really hard black and white.
You got me this time.
When I look at his images, I mean, he's got this app and called Iris that he's launched, and I joined it, and I look at a lot of his pictures, and I can see, because when you look at something where the blacks are so crushed, like so crushed, and then there's like a really fine edge around a specific figure. I know how to do that. There's people who know how to do it really, really well. I mean, my Photoshop and Lightroom skills are not so great that like if I don't like go like really try to like crush an image and really change it, that it's not gonna, you're gonna see the evidence that it's been fucked with. Like his pictures, I think like he's elevated his post to a level where I can't see like mistakes on the, where he brought up the black or brought down the exposure by using a mask and then didn't like get a little dark in an area and fuck the picture up. Like that's my problem if I ever do anything like that. It's pretty obvious I fucked with the image. But you know what? A lot of people, there's a photographer, he's not the first guy. It's so funny when we were trying to figure out what our picture of the week was going to be. There's a photographer named Lillian Bassman, and she was a fashion photographer who worked in like the 40s and 50s, did a lot of stuff for like Harper's Bazaar and Vanity Fair, all these different publications. And she, in the 70s, got so sick of photography that like she burned a bunch of her negatives and threw them away.
Oh yeah, I remember. And then you told me about her. That was actually one of your images.
Yeah. Did I? Okay. See, this is what happens when you get to be my age. You forget. But anyway, oh yeah, it was the one with the hat, the woman in the hat. Exactly. Yeah. So, but the thing about her is what she did was when she returned to photography, she started going with extremes of contrast where she would like blow the highlights out like crazy and bring the shadow, like crush the blacks. Like she went back to original images and completely reprocessed them. So literally there's two colors in the photograph, and a woman's face, whereas it was a completely normal, well-exposed photograph, she would jack the sliders so much that like the woman's face would be pure white, and all you would see would like the hint of an eye and like a nostril, like the edge of the hat. The body would be totally in black, and so the contrast was far more extreme than what Schaller does, right?
Yeah.
And so she ended up making images that looked a certain way, and they look. I mean, they're pretty trash. It almost gets to the point of where it gets almost like provoking because it's so just devolved from what the original image was. But it looks cool. So people will lean into certain things. I mean, there's, Phil Penman posts pictures of his process when he's in places like Grand Central Station and the Oracle, and the way that he's getting down and he's taking images at a certain shutter speed so that he gets some movement in his frame. And so that's how he gets results that look a certain way. And you could say like, okay, well, that's a trick, or that's a technique, or it's leaning into technology or whatever. I think most people, we think that way because we're photographers. I think most people who are just looking at a picture go, do I like this picture or do I not like this picture? And they're not thinking through, there's a thing with guitar players, right? Where when guitar players go to see other guitar players, especially a guitar player who's thought of as a prodigy, there'll be a bunch of dudes standing in front of the person at the stage with their arms crossed, just like looking at them. It's a thing. It's a cliche. It's like anybody who plays guitar knows exactly what I'm talking about. Like, but these dudes just stand there and they just look with their arms crossed because they're trying to figure out what the person does. Oh, well, he's doing, or he's using this pedal, or he's got this amp, or he's got, especially somebody who's got a certain sound or signature to their sound, or a certain technique that people are trying to figure out, or that they've gotten attention because they're doing something a little different. Which in guitar, as you can imagine, like, how many people play guitar? To be somebody who's recognized or acknowledged as somebody who does something different on guitar at this point in time is a big fucking deal, right? Like, this guy's doing, or girl is doing something differently than anybody else. So there's all these, just like, but it's like 5 or 6 chubby assholes who probably live in a basement and are a failed heavy metal band who are just going to sit there and judge, because that's what we do. And I hate to say it, but there's a lot of us in photography that are like that. I mean, I can be that fucking guy sometimes, like you look at somebody's shit and like I could see in 2 seconds exactly what they're doing, and everybody's like falling over themselves. And I'm like, what's the big fucking deal? He's blah, 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 blah. I get it in like 2 seconds. It doesn't matter because they might have 200,000 followers who think that they're fantastic. I mean, I look at a lot of Menaris's images We've talked about her before, and she's got a fantastic career and a tremendous amount of followers. And I look at a lot of her pictures, and I'm like, I don't really get why anybody would think this is a good picture, but the color looks kind of amazing. It looks like a movie. The color grading is amazing.
Cinematic.
But for me as a photographer, I have a lot of problems with some of the images that I see other people, like tens of thousands of people, clearly like.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm not paying Menar's bills. I'm not sending her to Italy to go stay in a hotel and take pictures. So clearly, what the fuck does my opinion about her photography mean? And I'm not saying she can't take a good picture, but I think that a lot of the pictures that she takes don't have the same photograph concerns that I consider to be really important to a good photograph.
Yeah.
So I'm like, bah. But meanwhile, I take pictures that have all the elements that I consider to be a good photograph, and they might get 10 likes. And a picture of hers that I think is kind of mid gets 20,000. So back to that comment of what is good and bad in art.
Yeah.
It's really hard to hang a tag on that.
I think this episode is very influence and a big metaphor with music. And I'm going to say, I love photography. I'm not unmotivated. I'm not bored of it. And I enjoy to continue doing it. But right now I'm in a phase where this is where my metaphor for music comes in. Is Lil Wayne, he is known for claiming he doesn't listen to other musicians. He claims he doesn't know who certain people are, regardless if they're kind of have a large following and that's where I'm at, honestly.
What?
Yeah. I don't consume as much photography from the outside world as I did. I'm just enjoying the process. And whether I get 10,000 followers, one extra follower, 11 people like my photo as opposed to the 6 that actually get to see it, it doesn't mean anything to me, because for me, it's my process.
Yeah. And I mean, the danger of, I guess some people are very competitive and other people are not competitive at all. I'm competitive. And when I was younger, and even now sometimes, I don't want to say that I get into that player hater vibe.
They hate us because they're hating us.
I hope all the bad things in life happen to you and nobody but you. I'm not on that tip. I'm happy to see when other photographers make it, and it can happen for a lot of different reasons. It isn't necessarily always only because of the picture that they took. There could be a lot of other stuff going on, what their personal story is, what their personal journey is, what kind of person they are, how many doors they're knocking on, how much hustle they have. There's so much that goes into whether or not somebody is successful. It isn't just about the picture, I think the most important thing, if I'm going to be competitive, and I realize that some people are not at all competitive, but I want to be competitive with myself.
Yeah.
More than anything. I'm going to look at all this other stuff. I look at a lot of people's other work. I'm friends with a lot of photographers. I go to a lot of photographic events. I go to museums in New York every week to see paintings or video installations or photography exhibits, whatever, to just try to absorb all this. But it's not because I'm trying to see what my work is or where it's at relative to what anybody else does. I'm trying to bring as much spice and as many ingredients and as much creative diversity into my brain so that when I take a picture, I can take all that and have it be very high quality data that I've uploaded into my brain, so that when I'm taking a picture, I'm hoping that some of that can influence what I'm doing so I can get better at what I do. That's kind of where I'm at, is being competitive with myself. If I've taken the same picture 20 times, that's fine if it took me 20 times to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
But then if I got it right and then I take it another 20 times, why am I doing that? And we've talked about this before. Like, I have a problem with getting to a place and moving in, right? I want to be a creative, more nomadic in what I'm trying to do. Like, I don't want to say like I've arrived at a place where I know how to do something and people seem to like it. And so I'm just going to hang out here and I'm going to keep doing that thing. I'm more like the guy who checks into the hotel for a few days and then takes his hat and his shit and he moves on to the next place, because I don't want to stay in one place and keep doing the same thing that I've already done. But there's a lot of people who see a destination, and once they get there, they're comfortable with it and they like being there, and they can build crazy successful careers on that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just it's a different creative mindset.
Yeah. I think how you mentioned you compete with yourself, I think that is possibly the best direction to go, only because you can't lose. You can't lose against yourself, right? So regardless of whatever your outcomes are, like, you win regardless.
Yeah. The reason why I do it is not because I'm looking to like win or that I'm, when I go to, I just went earlier this week to, there was an exhibit at the Museum of the City of New York, by Robert Rauschenberg, who's a modern artist, really important painter in modern art. Certainly one of the most important American artists of the second half of the 20th century, who used a lot of his photography in his art. So this was an exhibit at this museum of his photography. And there were also and he mixed it with all sorts of things, like he would like do paintings and then have a photograph and then paint on top of it, or collage photographs on top of each other. He would get these like plastic wheels and put that were colored and put pictures on them, and then project light through it and have the wheels turning at different speeds on the wall, so it would be projected and images would be going on top of each other and stuff like that. And it had interviews with him that were done in the 60s on TV. And so I sat and I listened to what he was saying about his work and what he was doing with it and everything. And he was like, oh, I want to try to get like all of life and all things that represent it. You know, like he had this hunger to like kind of do all this stuff. The competitive with yourself thing, when you listen to all these artists, when they talk about their process, and there's a thing on YouTube called the Louisiana channel, I think we've mentioned before, which is great because it's interviews with artists that are long form, like 20, 40-minute interviews with people where they talk about their creative process. And they talk about their development and looking at their development and over time. And, you know, that's part of what I mean by competing with yourself. You're looking at, you know, what was I doing a year ago, 2 years ago, and what am I doing now? And is it better? Is it different? Am I progressing? Am I moving forwards? And all the people who I've listened to who are successful, really good at writing, painting, doing music, sculpture, dance, anything. It's all people who have thought that way. Like they're constantly trying to evolve and develop as an artist and get somewhere. It's never a destination. It's always a journey.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to emulate that. And I'm not saying I'm on the level of those people or ever will be, but I think that, like, you know, I don't ever want to get to a place where I'm like, oh, this is my thing and I'm good at this thing and I'm just going to do this thing. Because I think when you do that, I think, you know, it's like it's like making an album that's successful and then writing the same album over and over again. Like the next 20 albums sound exactly the same.
Yeah.
Not interested in that for me personally.
Would that be considered competition or progression? I only say that because there was a while ago when I wanted to teach photography, I learned most people use the word education incorrectly. There's a lot of words we use incorrectly, and education is one of them, the most common one, I think. But anyways, yeah, competition or progression.
Well, to me, it's competition because I look at, okay, you're progressing. It's like anything else. When you practice at anything, you get better. And you, but the thing is, the practice is just a means to an end. Getting better means that you've practiced, because you're not going to get better by just sitting on your ass and not doing anything. So if you practice, you will get better. The point of practice is that you can get to a point where you're not thinking about it. Competition for me is something different because, you know, I'm 60. So one of the things that I'm competing with is, how many more pictures do I have left to take before I'm not here anymore? Right. I'm not 30. I'm not 25. I'm not 40. You know, I'm in like the last, let's say 25% of the game. I'm in the final quarter, let's say, unless I'm really fucking lucky, which, you know, but I'm in the final quarter of the game. So I'm competing with a finite amount of time, and I'm competing with, what have I done before? And if I'm going to go out, if I'm going to spend the time, am I going to do the same shit that I've always done? You know, I want to look at what I did last year and look at now and then say, okay, I can see all the ways in which I've gotten better. And now for the next year, what I'm doing is I'm going to ICP and seeing like a Bertinsky exhibit, and going and seeing this Rauschenberg thing, and going to the Met and seeing Man Ray. And I'm just looking at all this stuff and all the things that you can do as a human being on this planet with this box that we have in our hands, and how everybody has all these different perspectives, same tools, completely different work, completely different way of approaching it. Right. So competition, if I look at those three photographers, Man Ray, Rauschenberg, and Bertinsky, and what they did, why the fuck would I want to go out into, you know, Bryant Park and take a picture of someone walking down the street eating a fucking sandwich like 70 other people with a fucking M6 in their hand? So, and that's no slag to them, because I was one of those guys when I first started fucking around and shooting on the street. But the point is that, like, I don't want to be like the other 70 guys. I'm competing with mortality, and I'm competing with everything that everybody else has done photographically. And like, you're not, to me, if you're trying to do what everybody else is doing, you're not even in the fucking game. And you don't have to be in the game. If you just want to get out and take some pictures and it gets you off, that's completely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't want to do that. What I look at, what those three photographers, all of whom I've looked at their exhibits in the last, and then Deanna Arbus, another one. Those four photographers, look at how completely different their work is, and then look at my shit and go like, am I doing something that looks like some guy who I see out in Soho every week and we take the same pictures?
Yeah.
What, you know? So I'm competing with myself, and I'm competing with just the possibility of what you can do with the tools that we have. What can you do with it?
I really like this conversation. I like where it went. I do got one last thing to ask. You're competing with yourself. Do you have a end goal, or is it just kind of like an infinite loop?
An infinite loop?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I think you have to have dreams, and then you have to be realistic about how you're trying to motivate them. I mean, to me, a dream would be, because I do a lot of street portraiture, and I shoot a lot of young people who, and I'm interested in street fashion and streetwear and street culture. And I would love it if somebody saw my pictures at one of these magazines and said, your pictures are, because I know when I talk to these kids and I give them the pictures and they use them on their feeds and they use them as their profile pictures or whatever, and I see other pictures that other people have taken of them, I can see where they say, oh, your shit hits different. You're looking at things differently, you know? And it's because I'm trying. I'm not saying that all my pictures are different, but I'm trying to present these young people and their fashion in a different way than what's out there. I would love it if some magazine or some brand said, your shit's fire and we'd love to hire you. But because I'm a grown up and I'm not fucking delusional, like I know that if you want that to happen, you got to get a portfolio, you got to knock on doors, you got to go to parties, you got to schmooze people, you got to like get out there. That no one's going to come knocking on my door and be like, your work is so brilliant, here's a check, please work with. That's not going to happen. And because I have 2 little kids, my wife's an oncologist, and like I am my kid's primary caretaker, my wife works crazy hours, like, and I get out and shoot when I can. I have to be realistic about what I'm going to like accomplish. And then also, if you look at how many photographers have done all this incredible work that nobody saw when they were alive, and then after, you know, when they were like really old, somebody recognized it, or when they were dead, somebody found it, or what, you know, or whatever. You know, I don't want all the stuff that I've done to end up in like a dumpster.
Yeah.
So hopefully if it gets like really better and there's like, and I've shot some really great shit, maybe when I die, donate the archive to somebody, and maybe, you know, maybe in 50 years, someone will go like, wow, look at this archive of all this like street fashion from the post-COVID years in New York City or Coney Island. Look at all the culture in Coney Island. And it'll be, maybe I'll donate my Coney Island pictures to the Coney Island Museum. And then when I'm dead, you know, maybe my great grandchildren will be able to go and see my pictures there. That would be dope. I would love that. But in terms of being some kind of infinite loop, like I think all the things that we're self-conscious about, all the self-doubt that we have, all of this shit, like don't edit your pictures, only, you know, straight out of the camera, don't do this, don't crop, blah, 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 all this dogma, all this horse shit, all this self-doubt that we have, our success marketing relative to somebody else.
Yeah, it's marketing, by the way.
Yeah, well, no, all this stuff that we have, all these concerns, all this like self-doubt that we have and everything is killed in one way. It's by just going and doing the fucking work. So to me, like anytime I start getting in my own head and thinking about what's the point of this, I go, okay, stop, load a roll of film and go out. And then you'll understand what the point of it is, because of the way that I feel talking to people, framing, getting something out of the tank and looking at it. That's why. So there's no infinite loop, because every picture is different. And as long as I'm taking pictures that, like, if I'm going backwards, then I would shit my pants. If I'd go like, why the fuck am I going backwards? Yeah. But if I'm slowly creeping forwards, even if it's caterpillar speed, I'm good.
I think you misunderstood how I was referencing the infinite loop. I didn't mean it as
okay. Sorry.
No. Just to clarify, like, I'm not saying like your progress or the reasons why. It was more of I'm just continuing to do this just to do it, if that makes sense, right? So
no, it does make sense. Yeah. And honestly, I think that what I just said at the end there is an appropriate response to the question framed in that way, which is there's no, look, we can all get burnt out with shit sometimes and feel like I need to put this down and get refreshed. And it's important to do that. There's actually, I just read Sally Mann's book called Artwork, which is a really good read. It talks about a lot of the things that we've been talking about. But she talks about the need to kind of stop and put the camera down for a while and just not think about taking pictures, because sometimes you need to do that because that's what's required for you to get you to the next place. So if you're feeling burned out, sometimes you just kind of like need to stop and need to get to like another place. But if I ever feel like I'm on that, like what's the point of doing this? Like it's on some infinite loop. I might go to a museum and get excited by somebody else's work, or I might go see a film. You know, I have the Criterion channel, and I'll be like, okay, you know, like there's a bunch of work from Kurosawa. Let me watch some Kurosawa movies, and I'll get excited by something I see in one of the movies, or I might go to some event somewhere and just bring my camera. I'm not going to be a crazy photographer. I'm just going to go bring a couple of rolls, and I get there, and all of a sudden I feel it. You know, if you know how it is.
The juice is flowing.
If you're not feeling it, if you just feel like you're going through the motions, then and you got to recharge your batteries. I don't know. Maybe you need a vacation. Maybe you need to put the camera down. You know, the unfortunate reason that the thing that everybody comes up with is go buy something.
Go buy a Summilux. You definitely need it.
It's never. I don't think it's never that. I mean, people will say, "Oh, it's got me out shooting again," blah blah blah. And okay, so maybe on some level it is that. But
I
really,
despise that.
yeah. I did that for a long time. I always felt like I had to get new shit, and that's why we talked about this before. That's what's great about film is that when you buy something that's like 40 years old. And you have the camera, and especially if it's like a TLR and it's got a fixed lens, it's just like, well, I have my tool. I'm not, if I want to get excited, it's going to come from me. It's not because I'm going to buy something new. What am I going to do? Buy some fucking Oberwerth bag for $1,100 to get excited about going on a shooting?
Yeah.
Fuck that. You know, like just get excited about the pictures.
That's all learned methodology. Oh, this got me out. It inspired me to go take some photos. You got to think deeper than that. Well, what was the cause of you not wanting to go take photos? Like, was it really that new lens? Right? Like, if it is, then I'm not saying people don't get unmotivated, right? But like, if gear is your inspiration to go make photography, maybe your priorities are not aligned properly. I don't know. I can't speak for others. But I don't think, for me, I know for certain that photography equipment does not inspire me to want to shoot more. The thought of the process inspires me to want to continue to shoot more. And I can honestly say since 2017, I have not been in a emotional state of I'm tired of this. I don't want to pick up a camera again. What's the point? Right? Yeah. Learned methodologies.
Well, consumerism is a thing for real, right? And consumerism gives us that dopamine hit of like, if you look at like, there's some truly horrible shit going on in the world, and yet, you know, things, luxury goods, all this kind of stuff, have been at sky high levels for a while, right? They're making more and more expensive cars, more and more expensive handbags, all this other shit, watches, all this stuff. And new cameras keep coming out. There's going to be a Q3 monochrome that's going to be announced, I think, next week. There's going to be a new Leica M variant that's got an EVF built into it that's coming out. Yeah, you know, these things are coming out, and it gives you, you know, buying something gives you that hit. It's that, and you know, you get that dopamine hit. You feel good when you get like a new thing. When you think about getting a new thing, when you get the new thing, blah blah blah, whatever. But if I think about all the new things I've gotten through my life that I've been kind of obsessed with, and there's like I could write fucking lists, you know, of all the hobbies I've had and all the expensive shit that was like, oh, if I only get this, you know.
Yeah.
And those things are long gone and have been replaced 20 times since that was the Mount Everest. Yeah, exactly. Like the pinnacle of whatever. If I only had this, right? The thing is, for me, the ultimate, for me, dopamine hit of all time is if I take a picture that in 20 years, I'm still like, wow, look at this. Check this out.
I got one. It's my favorite photo I ever taken.
There you go.
And it sucks. It absolutely is. The person's cut in half, but for some reason, it's my favorite photo. And I can look at it for hours and just admire it because I made it.
Yeah. And to think that you can just do that. That's just you. Whatever camera you have, doesn't matter what camera you have, doesn't matter if it's micro 3/4 or mirrorless or rangefinder or medium format or whatever the fuck it is. It doesn't matter what kind of camera you have. It doesn't matter kind of lens. It doesn't matter what kind of bag or strap or film stock or anything. The picture that you took was a moment that where you positioned yourself. You decided what was going to be a frame. You did it. All that other ancillary shit that 90% of what's on YouTube is focused on means nothing and will not be thought of for even a second by someone looking at that picture 20 years from now.
Yeah.
There's this company Aether, and I have one of their jackets, and it's great. They make a Leica photographer's jacket,
monochrome.
right?
Yeah, I got the monochrome, the black one.
Yeah.
I wanted the green one.
And it's like a $900. Yeah, it's like a $900 jacket, but and that's great, and it makes oh cool, I'm wearing my $900 jacket, and it's like it's got pockets for films and shit. I'm like, I wear like a fucking shitty T-shirt, and I throw my film in a bag.
I gotta say,
and I wear a sweatshirt or whatever.
I gotta big up the jacket because I'm not gonna lie, I bought it because it's a Leica jacket. I'm just gonna throw that out there, right? I wanted a decent jacket. I shoot in cold environments, so a jacket made sense. I gotta say, this jacket for a photographer, a very minimal equipment photographer, which
you can carry a lot of shit, right?
It carries the essential stuff that I need, and I think it is probably, it was worth my investment. I would say that.
Yeah, but just devil's advocate, there's a lot of jackets that don't need to cost $900 because they have buttons that say Leica that have fucking lots of pockets, right? Yeah. My point is, you wanted it. It was a dopamine hit. It made you feel good. It was an aspirational purchase. But I'm just pointing out, and it's great that you enjoy it. And I think John has one too. I'm not trying to bag on you guys for having something that's cool. I have plenty of shit. Like I will just hold this up for a second. I have plenty of shit which is shiny and sparkly and makes no sense to purchase other than the fact that I like it. But the point that I'm trying to make is 20 years from now, you're not going to be remembering that you were wearing that jacket when you took a particular picture, and no one else will care. They won't care that did you have the M10 or the M11 monochrome? Oh, because one has 47 megapixels, the other one has 60, blah, blah, blah. All that they're going to look at is the picture. So the thing is, the biggest dopamine hit that you can get, and it gets back to what you said earlier about like, why do you do it, or how do you keep going, or don't you get bored with keep going it? There's always, every time I go out, I'm like, today there is the possibility that I'm going to take the best picture that I've ever taken, or that I'm just going to take some pictures that I like, and I may come back, and I come back on some days and I haven't shot a single frame, but I'm in the hunt, and you know what? I'm not like, okay, I got to get my Art Domano strap, and I have to have my half case on my camera, and I have to have my Oberth bag, and I have to make sure I have my Safari M11P, and I've got to be wearing my Leica jacket, and I'm wearing this like special hat, and I've got my Leica watch, all this stuff. And I see guys out there who have that vibe, and it's okay. Because, some of those people, like, I'm like, oh, let me see you working. I look at their Instagram page, and I'm like, okay, dude has all this stuff, and don't judge a book by his cover, because I thought, like, he's got all that stuff, he's got to be a shitty photographer. And then I look, and I'm like, oh, actually, the guy's really fucking good, So it doesn't mean that you're not a good photographer if you have that shit. I'm just saying that you can be that person, and in 20 years, when I'm with my cane and my walker, and I take a print out and I put it in front of somebody and they look at it, or I have a book or whatever, none of that shit is going to be part of the story of that picture at all, probably. Yeah. It's not going to matter.
I agree with essentially everything you said, and the consumerism, the dopamine hit, all of that. No one's going to care. Like, just think like how often is the topic of discussion of what Henry Cartier-Bresson wore? Like, we all know he used the Leica camera because he said it, but all the other great photographers, like, how often are we talking about, oh man, W. Eugene Smith was such an amazing photographer. Look at this picture of Tomoko in the bath. Like, I can definitely see 50 millimeter Summilux in this image. Like, no one's really talking about that. So
the thing is, the picture
Mhm.
is the 20-year or the 50-year or the 100-year dopamine hit.
Yeah.
Those pictures of Cardi that Smith took in the early 60s, late 50s, here we are 70 years later, and people are still going, wow.
Mhm.
That's the thing. That's the dopamine hit that keeps giving and giving and giving and giving. And so that, if you want to ask, why do you keep doing it, or how do you keep motivated to keep going, or how do you not have it be like an endless loop saying, what's the point? I guess it's because I've seen the possibility of getting one of those dopamine hits that's going to last for 20 or 50 years. And I want to do that.
Mhm.
And I want to do that more often than not.
Definitely. I want at least one image where it lasts the lifetime, the test of time. So this was a really good discussion topic. I do want to transition over to our photos of the week.
Cool.
Before we do, give you last words before we switch segments.
No, just that, again, I'm sure there's a lot of people that listen to what I'm saying and say, but wait, but what about blah? Or, well, hey, how come? But this person said, or what about this? Or who the fuck are you? Or whatever, these are all opinions. Everybody looks at things differently. Everybody has different motivations. I find I get a lot of enjoyment out of meeting people who have similar motivations to me, but even with people who I have similar motivations and we think a lot the same. Mm-hmm. Like I have a friend here in New York named Ryan David, who John also knows, who does a lot of fashion stuff, and he's a really good photographer. And there'll be some people who we talk about and we're totally aligned. We're like, oh, yeah, I don't get it, man. I don't get these pictures. And then there'll be other people and he's like, oh, I love this guy's work. And I'll be like, really? Kind of mid, dude. And he's like, no. And I could tell it's like a weird moment because we're like not agreeing about something. And when you have a friend that like you agree all the time and then sometimes you don't agree, it's like a little bit like,
yeah.
But that's life, man. We can't all like the same. Yeah, we can't all like the same things, can't think the same way. Nobody has, the ultimate opinion. There is no ultimate truth. So whatever I just said, if you disagree with it, good for you. If you think that what I said is fucking wrong, good for you. Cool. If you agree, cool.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Just go download the new Alan Scheller app. I'll advertise for him. I don't got it. I don't plan on getting it. But anyways, so there's a really good conversation. A lot of thought provoking on my end. I'm not sure how much thought I enticed in on your side. But
dude, you pull this shit out of me. It's not like I walk around the house thinking about this stuff. I walk around this house thinking about, is this box of crackers, if I take one out, is it going to be stale or is it going to be edible? That's that's my morning.
I'm glad you pulled that up because now I'm gonna shameless plug myself, and then we'll definitely hit the new segment or the next segment. So I'm a certified coach, right? So if anyone is wondering what that means, you probably all heard life coach and stuff like that. I am specializing in leadership because of my primary employer, right? I lead, so I specialize in that. But also, since I'm a photographer, I also want to start coaching other photographers through photography. I will include a link if anyone is interested to set up a discovery call. And essentially, coaching it's not therapy. It's not me giving you advice on what I would do to become the next Phil Penman. It is me provoking your thoughts to discover, how you said, you bring it out of me. So that is something that I am now journeying into, I guess. So yeah, I hope I got someone who's interested, and they'll allow me to, I'll talk to you more after, but they'll allow me to coach them through the photography. and or leadership or life, whatever it is you need. So there's that. And then with that being said, we will now move into photos of the week. I do gotta say, last sentence, I like how we started off with the frame and then we just kind of tangented off everywhere and we ended up with the endless loop. Good conversation.
Well, and just to put a final point on that
Mhm.
in a really short way, everything that we talked about gets back to the frame also.
Mhm.
What are you going to leave in and what are you going to leave out in terms of what your concerns are? You know? So it isn't just about the picture. You've got to make decisions about what kind of photographer you're going to be, what you're going to spend your time on, your money on. That's putting all that shit in the frame too. And there's going to be things you're going to include and there's going to be things that you aren't going to include. So to me, if like, I almost feel like I should get a tattoo of a frame on my arm because everything that I do, you know, you're constantly making decisions about what to include, what not to include, what you're going to prioritize, how big should it be within that frame, because there's just only a certain amount of stuff you can put in that frame. And life is a frame.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to include? You can't put everything in there, man. You know, there's only a finite amount of shit that's going to go in there. So it's like, I just really think that like looking at all of this stuff in terms of you've got X amount of space. Mm-hmm. What are you going to put in that space? What's the most important? What's smaller? What's bigger? What's nearer? What's further? You know, what's in focus? What's slightly out of focus? All of that stuff is kind of a philosophy you can apply to kind of to life, not just to pictures. So that's it.
Yeah. No, well said. Well said. I like it. Everything. Oh, gotta make sure we put the right stuff in our frame. So, all right. Without further ado, we'll do photo of the week now. We'll start off with yours. So here is your photo of the week. Here we go.
Yeah. So when you look at this, what do you think first, Rick?
I immediately noticed the rear view mirror, and I think it's also a metaphor, right? For fork in the road, always continue progressing and never look back. And I like how the mirror is kind of centered, just to kind of give you that perspective of just leave whatever's behind you, and you can either go left to the competition side or you can go right to the endless loop. You like that tie back? I did that one for you.
Yeah, cool. This is actually the actor Dennis Hopper.
Okay.
Who was in a lot of different movies, not the least of which Rebel Without a Cause, Apocalypse Now, Blue Velvet, River's Edge, Hoosiers, director of Easy Rider. He was really into photography, crazy into photography in the 60s. And this is his most famous image. It's called Double Standard. Mm-hmm. What's kind of interesting about it is it kind of captures a moment in California in the early 60s, you know, this kind of car culture, because he's in a convertible with the visors turned up. Mm-hmm. You can see that kind of oval at the top of the screen. You can see the sky there, but the depth of it and the layering of it in terms of the rearview mirror with the cars behind it, and you can't really see the drivers in the cars behind it, which is kind of interesting. The fact that cars on the right are pointing at him. I'm assuming there must have been like a traffic light or something here, or maybe he's just going really slow to be able to kind of, especially because all the cars are like stacked up on his bumper. He must have grabbed this really, really quickly, this frame. But there's a lot of art from the 60s. Like he was a big proponent of modern art in the 60s and like used to go to galleries. He was one of the foremost collectors of modern art. He was involved in, I think, buying when Andy Warhol painted Campbell's soup cans and did a show out in LA. He was one of the few people that actually bought those. They were like $25 each. Now I think they're worth millions of dollars for each one of those paintings. But he had an incredible collection of art, of modern art, him and his wife, Brooke Hayward. And I have a book of his photographs that's pretty interesting. But this is somebody who kind of was really involved in the modern art scene in LA in the 60s, and people like Ed Ruscha, who also mixed photography, kind of like Rauschenberg, also mixed photography and painting. Were doing things like painting gas stations and, changing what art was about, looking at like things in our daily lives and painting them and elevating them to art. So this picture to me compositionally, I think is really strong and really interesting. And it's a snapshot in time, but it also, when you read about everything that Dennis Hopper was involved in at the time and all the artists that he was friends with, and through his whole life, he was really into painting. He had this like incredible, amazing house in LA that was filled with modern art up until the point when he died. He's just a very interesting character, and I just love this picture. I think if I was going to pick, if I could pick a handful of pictures to put on the wall of like, if I ever won Powerball and had like a really great apartment, I would want to get a gigantic fucking print of this and make it be like an entire wall, because I love everything about this picture and about him. I think he was a flawed human being who did a lot of really interesting shit with his life.
Well, none of us are perfect, but yeah, not I.
Yeah, well, he was. Yeah, if you read about him, he was definitely. There were definitely periods of life where he was very far from being a perfect human being. Definitely, but he cleaned himself up.
Yeah, he made some really good decisions. But I like, kind of like you said, the metaphor. You got the woman on the billboard sign, and then you got the man standing there at the crosswalk. So there's a lot of, like, I don't want to say juxtaposition, but there's a lot of comparisons and contrast and depth. And yeah, this is a really good image. I'm not going to lie, it's the first time I've seen this one specifically. I didn't even know he was a photographer. I only knew him as an actor.
Yeah. And the reason why I mentioned all the stuff that he did in terms of modern art is that, and it gets back to kind of what I was saying earlier about going to museums and seeing other stuff. It's like when you see all these things and it goes into your brain, he was around all these people who were turning all this stuff into art. Mm-hmm. So he's at this intersection, and he's got a camera, and he lifts it up and he takes this photograph. And when he did that, the fact that he saw this and saw it as something that was worthy of taking a photograph and captured this image is informed by all the other stuff that he was involved with at the time. And that's why I always harp on it with other people, like when they get blocked or if they're feeling uninspired or they ask me like, what inspires me? I'm like, go to museums, man, see other shit, because it gets into your brain and it'll affect your work, but just make sure you're looking at good stuff. Like we look at so much garbage on Instagram, doom scrolling and looking at like totally meh crap. And if that's all you look at and then you go out and try to take pictures, your brain is fighting with a lot of the shit that it's seen.
Yeah.
But if you're constantly feeding yourself it's like if you want to be in shape, if you're eating McDonald's all the time, you're not going to run a marathon after eating like a bunch of McDonald's for 6 months, but eat healthy. Yeah. And so, that's what this picture is him being around all these modern artists. And I think that's one of the reasons why he took this photograph and saw it as a photographic opportunity. Mm. What's your picture?
Yeah. So, once again, thanks for sharing this image. I appreciate it. Educated me on some new photography. I like that. And this is mine. I really quick prefaced this with, we've mentioned this photographer before, and we kind of alluded to the fact that he's only known for a singular look, to which this image, I think, will debunk that, which most photographers, if you know who he is, he's got more than just a single look. So here it is. I'm not going to lie, I don't know the name of it, but I know the image. And for me, this is Bruce Gilden's photo from when he went to his first trip in Japan. And I like it because he shows humanity at ground level, as opposed to the in-your-face, provocative flash photography that he's more known for.
Yeah. Yeah, and the fact that it shows like the indifference of everybody just walking by this person who clearly is at their lowest, and the fact that the person has their ears clenched their hands so clenched so tightly around their head. It's almost like someone would be in that pose if they were on the ground being kicked and they were trying to protect themselves from being beaten.
Yeah.
Or they're trying to not hear what's around them. So it's kind of almost like, because no one's assaulting him overtly, but in a way he's being assaulted by their indifference, So it's a great image, and again it shows that he saw that and knew what he was going to convey. And look at the frame.
Yep, this one is a perfectly framed image, as well as Dennis Hopper's.
Yeah, with that guy, he's not cut off here.
Yeah,
I think obviously he's not controlling the crowd to the right, but he moved the camera so that you would have all that. I'm guessing. I mean, he probably shot this with something like a 28. I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think he's a 28 guy, but this kind of at the low angle is very 28-ish.
Yeah, any wider than 28, and you wouldn't have the depth of field to be able to just snap this really quickly and not have to worry about where your focus was. And any shorter, and you'd have trouble composing what's in the image. So I think you're right. I think this is probably a 28, but a great frame.
I would even go so far as to say he is probably a master at his equipment. If you look relatively to where the camera obviously is positioned, you kind of develop your own idea of how he was. One, he's either kneeled down, right? And he's got the camera close to the ground and just kind of tilted up. And he already knew where the frame line is just by experience. Or he's laying on the ground, low crawl position, and he's carefully composing. But the motion of the foot here closest to the front of the frame, I think for me is probably the highlight of this image. Not to detract from the person on the ground, but just to be able to capture that motion in a very, I'm going to say it's a perfect way, because nothing, you can see the motion, but you don't lose any of the details. For me, that's like a perfect motion shot.
I think what's more important about the foot is that, looking at the guy covering his head, the foot suggests danger in proximity to somebody who's covering their head. So it's almost like the guy covering his head, I know all these people aren't even going to notice me, and I'm worried about someone kicking my head in. And the fact that there's a foot that's clearly in motion, that's really close to his head, is what both of those things make. That's what the picture's about, is the foot and him covering his head like that.
Yeah.
And it's about a lot of other things too. It's about the indifference of people to the suffering of people on the street that you pass every day, the homeless people that are mentally disabled, or anything that we are indifferent to while we go around doing whatever we're going to do. But the fact that he's covering his head, please don't kick me in the head, and that there's a foot that's so close to his head that's in motion, it's like black foot. I mean, it's not pointed at his head, but it underscores and elevates what he wants you to think about in the picture. Now, I guarantee you he wasn't waiting for the foot to be in that exact position when he took that shot. It's probably just a really lucky shot. But the other thing that's great about it is I'm pretty sure that this was shot on film, looking at the grain structure and whatnot.
I'm saying HP5.
And I think, I'm thinking that, definitely looks Ilford because it's not super contrasty. But, the thing that's great about it in terms of it being a film image is I think that blur looks, personally, motion blur, I think looks more natural and a little bit more organic on film. And also, if this was on a monochrome camera, digital camera, that highlight blowout in the back would have been horrible.
Yeah, it would have been
fucking horrible and probably ruined the picture. Yeah. But with film, it's Yeah, with film, it's when you blow a highlight, it's a little bit more tolerable. I could be wrong. It could have been a digital picture, but it kind of looks to me like it's
No,
like it's filmed.
I'm also fairly certain this is film. I believe these images are from like way before monochrome cameras were even thought of.
Cool.
So yeah,
good picture.
Thank you.
And there you go. Two very different pictures, right?
Yeah.
So back to our earlier thing, like, why would you ever want to go out with a camera in your hand and try to do what somebody else has done? What's the fucking point of that?
Yeah.
You know,
I make my own legacy, or I'm making my own legacy. So
yeah, you're just being yourself, man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, art is about self-fulfillment before it's about anything else. You know, like we always kind of like, because we live in such a consumer driven society, I think that we think about art as like a way where there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow somehow. Mm-hmm. But the pot of gold really is at the beginning of the rainbow, which is that you find out about yourself.
Yeah. It's not a pot of gold.
You find out about yourself. Yeah. Well, it's self-discovery, and like, who am I? What am I interested in? What kind of pictures do I take? Can I get better? You know, all that stuff. It's not like, you know, some guy with a cigar, like, come in, my dear boy, the world is waiting for your art.
Yeah. We'll put this on Facebook Marketplace right away.
Here's this bag of gold. Yeah. Anyway.
Wow, that's awesome. Anyways, this was a really good conversation. I do appreciate it. Thank you, Jim. Thank you to the fans, listeners, and supporters. Sorry for the delay. Once again, I had some events that I could not miss. I've been waiting years to shoot, and I finally got it. Only to learn that my camera's rangefinder was somehow misaligned. And it wasn't because it was a 135. I'm really good with that lens. And the more I use it, the frame lines actually feels like there's so much space in there that, like, looking at the 135 frame lines, I'm like, are these the actual, like, this seems too large to be 135. And then I'm like, no, all right, this is a 135. But I guess that's just because muscle memory with your eye, you kind of learn. But I'm really good with the 135, not even gonna lie. Anywho, yeah, my rangefinder somehow came unaligned, and I would say 80% of the images I got are out of focus. However, I did get lucky with some, and some that I really like were good on the focus check. However, since I am a fan of the Provoke era, I didn't trash the photos. I actually kept them. And it's a memory keepsake of what happens when your images aren't perfect. The moment's perfect. So, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So,
all right, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Once again, thank you all. I hope someone is interested in getting some photography coaching. So, yeah. Message me or Jim on Instagram if you have any recommendations, if you'd like to hear anything, or just like to say thanks for making the podcast. Stuff along those lines. So,
yeah, I'm always down to talk to people, and I know I've started building like a little circle of people who I talk to on Substack, which has been great. There's some good people on there that I've met that are kind of outside the Instagram circle, and that's been great too. So if anybody's listening to this and you haven't connected with us and you just want to say hi or ask a question or make a point, like, don't be shy.
Yeah, always available. So once again, thank you.
Cool.
Leica Street Photography Collective. I'm Ricky, and that's Jim. Peace.
Peace.